BDB local -2-1 Exhibit K.
Been motioned by Ms. Bush, second by Mr. Mayfield, that we consider appropriate the action item K. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, Mr. Attorney, yes.
Am I correct that this is the first reading of this policy or the second reading?
This is the first that I've seen.
Okay. As you know, your policy BF local requires that you have 2 readings on any policy amendment unless there is an emergency, and I'm not aware that there's an emergency involved in this issue. Pointing that out.
Ms. Bush has the floor just then.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to make mention of that, as well as there's some other things that we typically do when we're getting ready to make changes on this. Normally what we like to do, just to protect ourselves, seeing as how we're always under the gun, and we've already been told tonight that we're subject to lawsuits, is that we want to try and have these things reviewed by TASB Legal, as well as our own legal counsel. And as you mentioned, we'd like to have 2 readings of those, because that's a part of our policy as well, unless it is an emergency. And I think we would also like to make sure that, I think at our last meeting, we asked if questions that were abounding around interpretations of what could and could not be done were going to be addressed with TASB, along with Mr. Neal and Neal, along with Mrs. Chappelle. And I have not gotten a report of that meeting having taken place, or those questions being lined out. So I do see the policy we have here tonight, that I think based strictly on the fact that legal reasons alone and legal complications that could arise, that we would want to delay voting on this particular, or approving this particular policy.
Mr. McNeil has the floor.
To answer your question, Ms. Bush, we were trying to set up a conference call with the Secretary of State's office, along with Mr. Deal and myself, and Ms. Chappelle, but the Secretary of State's office said that they would not set up a conference call for us, so it was not possible to do.
Were you able to meet with TASB? I thought that y'all were going to talk to some TASB people.
No, my interpretation was, remember, we were going to speak with the Secretary of State, because TASB has let me know that all they do is a consulting arm. They do not, the legality of the election law is not their determination. That goes directly from the Secretary of State.
They did not meet.
No, they said they didn't do that. I'd like to know, and I got an answer from Dr. Chagwat, but I'm going to repeat the question since we have an attorney. First of all, where is Ms. Chappelle? This is an extremely important meeting. We have extremely important business that has a deadline, and I was wondering where Ms. Chappelle was, if you don't mind letting us know.
Mrs. Neal, to my knowledge, she's ill.
Okay. Okay. You know, my frustration is that we have nothing from Ms. Chappelle. We have, counted down, I don't know how many months left. 7 months, 8 months before an election. I've stated several times and will continue to state, I think that some of the board and Ms. Chappelle and the law firm are doing nothing but stalling. I was really surprised to find that she doesn't have a plan available for us tonight. She, I believe, said something about still working for TASB, but I think that's, I don't think that's truthful, because it doesn't take that much to put a plan together. She had a plan for us. I've given her numerous communications. Mr. Neal gave this plan to her 2 months ago. So as far as her checking out with TASB, whether or not she has, I don't know, but she's had 2 months now to try to pass this plan through TASB. And I'll be honest with you, you know, I'm getting sick and tired of this delay. There's no doubt that the majority of the board is against the 5-2. The community spoke. Dr. Thomas, when he was superintendent, laid out that you know, we have something that we have to do as a board to continue to delay this and delay this and delay this. There's no doubt that, in my mind, and it's my opinion, that the intention is to continue to delay it through May of 2013, so there's not an election that has something to do with the 5-2. And I think that the community, I know the community voted on it, and I think we should honor what the community does, and I think that we should do what we're legally bound to do as a board.
Let me address something real quickly. There, I do have a packet together. I think you made a request for the additional information that was submitted I do have that, and I have a packet full of information that's been requested by Mr. Neal. We'll have it probably after executive session.
Okay. And then, as I said in my email to you, I know that this is a board action. This is not a superintendent's, but I guess, leaning to you for a little bit of help in getting this resolved. Ms. Chappelle, to me, has shown no desire to get this done. She has dragged her feet at every opportunity, and to not have a plan for us together today is very disappointing. I would also like to recommend that we start meeting weekly so we can have these readings, we can have a plan presented to us, we can read the policy like it is, and that we can move on and do something about this. If we're supposed to have 2 policy readings, like Mr. Hunt said, she brings a plan in October, reads it in October, and then we're not going to vote on it until November. And that's just it's unacceptable to me as a trustee. It's also unacceptable to me as a member of the community.
Ms. Bush has the floor. Well, I guess he took his name off on the seat. I'll put your name down. Mr. Tom Neal has the floor.
Thanks. Mr. Hunt, as far as the second reading, I had presented this same option here a month or 2 back that was put on an agenda item. Does that constitute a reading of it?
Let me just read you the policy, Tommy, and see if this answers your question. This is BF Local, page 102. Proposed policy statements and revisions shall be submitted to members of the board in writing at least 1 calendar week in advance. I assume that was done tonight. Proposed local policy amendments introduced and recommended to the board at 1 meeting shall not be adopted until a subsequent meeting. Emergency adoption, however, may occur in 1 meeting if special circumstances demand an immediate response. That's the policy.
So I see, since it was submitted prior to, then we should be in compliance.
Introduced and recommended to the board at 1 meeting. Was that done?
The policy was not recommended, no, sir.
Well, it's a
That's
policy
correct.
reference.
It's not recommended.
I guess you're, 1 meeting short. When do you all meet again?
Well, I agree with Mike. I think we need to meet weekly until we get this issue, until we get this passed.
Nothing said this time. Thank you.
Okay, so it was not fulfilled that you got it in writing to the board of trustees within 7 days prior to this issue.
No, sir, it was not an official. Right. It was submitted, but it was not presented as an official record.
Our attorney has spoken.
I was just clarifying.
Clarifying the attorney?
And I was clarifying to you.
No, clarify me, clarify the attorney. He's attorney.
I'm just reading the policy. Hope that answers the question.
Ms. Bush has the floor.
I just have one more thing to say since Melody is not here to defend herself. We asked Melody to follow a certain procedure last month to try and satisfy the Neals. That was not done. We were not able to do that. You weren't able to meet with Tasman and get a common recommendation. You went to Secretary of State, you didn't get anything there. I don't think Mrs. Chappelle is dragging her feet as much as there is not a recommendation that has been able to come forward because we were trying to appease both of you having heard the same answers from the Tasman people. But I don't think we're also in a need to rush because, first of all, we don't know whether or not the plan is even going to be passed by the Justice Department. So to say that we're in a rush and we have to do this right now until the ruling comes from the Justice Department, we may not have a 5-2 election in May. That may be mute. So I don't think it's her that's dragging her feet. I think that we can simply wait for the ruling from the Justice Department and then decide what we're going to do.
Mr. Mike has the floor.
I can appreciate you and I have a different opinion on whether or not the foot drag is wrong. I will leave it there at that. However, there never has been a need for a rush from some people. There's not a need to have a 5-2 with some people. We don't need to wait until the Justice Department pre-clears because this has to go back to the Justice Department. It's supposed to be all in the same process. And so the continuing saying or verbalizing that there does not need to be a push, just continues to meet to make my point, that the dragging goes on and on and on. Mr. Pell has had plenty of time to come up with a proposal. She's heard, from what I understand, from many of the board members, there's nothing else to dispute is what the way they found it. I mean, I think the way she stated it, because people from West Peyton had called, and I had talked to her, and I think at that point it was established that there was a dispute there. And they said that that's really, if I remember correctly, it's really not their job to try to mediate a dispute. So at that point, I let Ms. Chappelle know that it wasn't possible, and that's where it was left.
Okay, because it was my understanding the whole thing was that there was either different interpretations or you all had spoken to different people at the Attorney General's office so that you got two different opinions, and that you all were going to try to come up with one voice from that office.
Right. And
So-
I'd spoken with Ms. Hart, is that Nancy Hart? Is that her name?
Nancy Hart.
Yeah, spoken with Nancy Hart. She's actually the one who had been in communication with the Secretary of State in Tasby. I gave her the lady who I spoke with, and she talked to her also. So we sort of narrowed it down to having one person to talk to, but when it came down to having a conference call, that's when the Secretary of State, I think, the office basically threw their hands up and said, we're beyond what we need to be doing in the situation. I wish they could have helped us, because they really could have.
Right.
You know, they at least have 4 people on the line laying out the same scenario to get the same opinion back from the state.
Well, would they put an opinion in writing and mail it to us or fax it to us?
They probably will. It's a matter of us agreeing how we're going to send the scenario where we're at. The way that Ms. Hart told me the question she asked, and my thought was it's not quite a full scenario, but again, it's up to opinion. I have one opinion, you know, just like, Ms. Bush has a different opinion, and I think if we can figure out how to state it and send it to them in writing, I think